Alright, let's get back into the rest of Effie's video where he claims to have beaten me. If you haven't seen the first part, you might want to check it out first. His intellectual dishonesty had already risen above most of the people I debunk, and fair warning, he only gets worse from here. You are aware that America is not supposed to be a democracy, right? Maybe in your meticulous perusal of the Constitution, you missed Article 4, Section 4.
I have that exact section of the Constitution on screen right now, but to make it quick, this is incredibly misleading. Whenever the Founding Fathers talked about democracy, they were strictly referring to direct democracy, with their definition of a republic being much closer to what we would currently call a representative democracy.
No, it is not, you liar! The representative democracy was very limited to just a few legislative functions, and it was supposed to be put in check by the Senate, appointed by the states. That got abrogated by the 17th Amendment, and that caused a lot of the mess we're in today. It's no coincidence that the rise of modern mercantilism and the erosion of state sovereignty got kicked into high gear right at this time. And by the way, it's also put in check by the executive and judicial branches, which weren't democratic at all. There's supposed to be a check on democracy. If you've heard people lately whining that the Supreme Court is anti-democratic, well, guess what? They're supposed to be. That's their job.
I should also point out that if you amend the Constitution, you can't cite another part of the Constitution as to why that amendment would be invalid.
What? No! That's been decided before! That's why they couldn't end the slave trade before 1908, and why the 17th Amendment itself, like I just mentioned, is arguably bogus, because, quote, no state, without its consent, shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. It's long been acknowledged that you can't simply make an amendment to change the fundamental constructs of the Constitution. To do that, you'd have to rewrite the whole of the article in question. Otherwise, you'd have a contradiction that would make it invalid. The Constitution must be read consistently throughout.
But even if Mr. Beat did want the U.S. to be more directly democratic, that doesn't even necessarily go against Article 4, Section 4.
Yes, it does! This is supposed to be a republic!
As the Supreme Court ruled in the 1912 case, Pacific State Telephone and Telegraph Corporation v. Oregon.
Lie! The Supreme Court found they didn't have the jurisdiction to say whether or not it is absent an act of Congress. But even if you'd been right, the Supreme Court said a lot of wacky things. Remember Plessy for one big example? That's what they are! People who have gotten together for a specific purpose!
No, they're legal entities separate from their distinct owner.
Exactly the opposite was found in Citizens United, which you already know about because, like me, you watched the video all the way through before debunking it, right? Yes, I covered it in the very video he's responding to. This was the Supreme Court case that struck down McCain-Feingold, a First Amendment-hating law that said that people couldn't pool their resources to criticize a federal candidate within 60 days of a general election or 30 days of a primary. Merely coming together to make a corporation did not mean they lost their First Amendment rights. And by the way, if you're going to respond to this, check my channel first. I have videos on the Citizens United case. Might want to watch them before you make an idiot of yourself.
I also want to point out just how vague his definition of corporations are. A film set is also a group of people meeting together for a specific purpose.
And they're run by a corporation. That mom and pop shop down the road is a corporation. The guy who owns the hardware store formed a corporation. That family-owned restaurant is a corporation. Do you have any idea how this works? He then goes bleating on about high schools and Discord servers, not realizing that Discord is a corporation, as is the city or county that runs the high school. How can some people be so unaware of the world around them? But even absent that, he's making a basic logic fail. Corporations are groups of people. That's all they are. That doesn't mean that all groups of people are corporations. Corporations are a subset of things that are groups of people. A implies B does not mean B implies A. Elementary logic. So as soon as you get together with your buddies to pool your resources in order to be able to amplify your voice, which you'd need to do if you're not already rich, Mr. Pete would immediately step in and take it away from you, basically guaranteeing the right to the means of speech, which costs money, to the rich.
The issue at hand has never been common people pulling their resources together.
Yes, it has been! That's who the so-called robber barons were. That's who Citizens United were. They want to stop common people like you and me from getting together and being able to compete with their cronies. That's the only thing it's ever been about.
The issue has always been a group of people with more resources than anyone else, then pulling their resources together.
If they have more resources than anyone else, they don't need to pool their resources. Idiot!
And using that as a means to drown out the voice of the average person.
Then explain Citizens United!
The fact is, the means of speech which cost money are always going to be used more by the wealthy than by the poor, because it's the wealthy who have more money to spend on communication in the first place.
Unless the rest of us can pool our resources enough to match them.
Hence why we didn't see this utopia of small political corporations popping up out of nowhere with grassroots money in the wake of the Citizens United case.
What are you talking about? That's exactly what we saw. And look at how many of these political action groups have done a lot of good, like having some positive effect on various pieces of legislation or even stopping them entirely. Using FOIA requests to get information that people have a right to, or filing amicus briefs with the Supreme Court. For crying out loud, man, open your eyes and look around you once in a while. What would groups like Judicial Watch, FIRE, the Institute for Justice, Downsize DC, the Copia Institute, and many others be without Citizens United?
If corporations are people, then they should be able to receive the death penalty. Oh, snap. I agree.
Really? The death penalty for speech? The death penalty is evil enough as it is, but you want to use it for speech?
First off, being eligible does not mean using it in every and all circumstances.
It shouldn't even be used in one circumstance, you fascist psycho!
The idea of giving a corporation the death penalty is inherently absurd.
Tell that to all the people who've lost their livelihood because government bogusly shut down their company. Check my podcast. I have lots of examples.
Especially considering corporations are not even physical entities.
The people who lost their livelihoods are! Do you see, people? Do you see the raging psychopath you can turn into when you convince yourself that something about forming a corporation means you're no longer considered to have the rights that should be recognized to all people? Government can shut down your business, take your house and everything you own, and it's A-OK with people like Effie here. After all, you should have learned your place, citizen. You're supposed to kowtow to your government and the corporate masters they like. How dare you try and start one of your own, you plebe? You make me sick! Because you want rich cities to choose the president, with poor and rural areas basically having no say.
You do know there are more poor people than rich people, right?
Not demographically. Look who's in control of the more densely populated areas.
Also, rural areas would still get their say. Their say would just be proportional to what percent of the population they are.
No, that's how it is now. Your nonsense would mean they're outvoted every single time. This is why our founders didn't want a democracy and saw the benefits of having a republic instead.
Any agenda that new president would want to enact would still have to go through Congress.
Why do you think they set it up where the Electoral College was equal in numbers to congressional representatives and senators? so that there would be a balance between the legislative and executive branches. You wouldn't have an imbalance in either one. Again, that was already abrogated in the Senate with the 17th Amendment. Eliminating the Electoral College would just mess it up even further. It's bad enough now that presidential elections are concentrated in swing states, but it's better than being concentrated in rich states. The problem we have is that the Electoral College isn't really allowed to do its work. It's supposed to be a deliberative body whose sole job is to choose the president. Now, they're a bunch of automatons who vote the way they're told, and people panic at the idea of faithless electors. Again, want to fix the Electoral College? Make it deliberative again, and make it proportionally representative.
Well, whose fault is that? Him for wanting actual representation in government, or conservatives for being so unable to appeal to large swaths of the population they have to artificially rig the game in their favor?
Wow! Thanks for showing your true colors, fascist! So, when exactly did conservatives rig the game? Because they'd have to have built a time machine to do it. Here's why you're nothing but fascist scum. Because you don't realize that this is not in any way about the majority getting their way. It's about stopping the majority from getting their way and protecting the rights of minorities. It's about putting an end to gangs and mobs just as it is rich and aristocrats. It's not just that popular isn't always right, it's that you stifle all progress. New ideas, by definition, start out unpopular. But they still deserve their place at the table. How else are you going to decide which new ideas are better and which old ones need to go? All you're talking about is preserving the status quo, solely because you personally like it.
I'm still for federalism here.
No, you aren't.
Well, you just took that clip out of context.
No, I did not. He is not for federalism, and I showed why.
Here it is in Beat's original video.
Now, at the state level, there could be additional reforms, like implementing ranked choice voting, approval voting, or score voting. I'm still for federalism here. Let the states still run their own elections.
That's not what federalism means, moron!
However, count every vote. One person, one vote.
That is exactly what federalism doesn't mean!
So, one person, one vote, everyone's vote is counted equally, regardless of what geographical area they're from, is elitism to you.
It's elitism to everyone who looks at the situation and what that would result in. And I explained why it is in detail. You have no excuse. And I kid you not, folks, one time he even says right out that he doesn't want people in rural areas to have their say. Direct quote. But today, less than 15% Americans live in rural areas. No offense to those living in rural areas, but why should you have that much leverage over everyone else? That urban elitism is exactly what he wants. He wants his rich, powerful elite to run roughshod over people in rural states.
So, one person, one vote, everyone's vote is counted equally, regardless of what geographical area they're from, is elitism to you. Personally, I would call artificially extending representation to people disproportionately far more elitist than giving everyone an equal playing field.
You want to remove the equal playing field. And also, don't think we didn't notice that you didn't disagree with what I just quoted him saying. By way of analogy, blacks are also roughly 15% of the population. What if he'd said, "No offense to black people, but why should you have that much leverage over everyone else?" He'd be condemned as a hideous racist.
You know, it's funny that's your example, considering the Electoral College actually does disproportionately give power to white voters.
No, it doesn't, you racist liar!
Yeah, you know those urban areas you're worried would pick the president without the Electoral College? That's where minorities tend to live.
Oh, shut your lying mouth, you racist scum! Rural areas are not solely populated with white people. You have a bigger proportion of black people in rural, particularly southern states than you do in places like California and New York. You can just look this up, As of the 2020 census, the states where blacks are more than 30% of the population are Mississippi, Louisiana, and Georgia. Other states where they're more than 20% are Maryland, Alabama, South Carolina, Delaware, and North Carolina. And the rest who have a portion greater than 15% are Virginia, Tennessee, Florida, and Arkansas. California is only 5.7% black by comparison, far lower than the national average. African Americans have far greater representation in the swing states today than they would in the states that would dominate with one man, one vote. And by the way, when you do look at places like New York and LA, if anything, those are places where blacks have less say and are more oppressed than anywhere else.
What you're referring to when you're talking about not infringing upon their rights is just the concept of inalienable rights. It has nothing to do with the fundamentals of a republic in general.
A republic is how you protect fundamental rights. Read something the founders wrote for once.
Now you're saying that you believe the Senate should be picked by state legislators.
I've always said that. I made the case plainly.
Essentially making it so all senators are going to be political insiders.
Oh, shut your lying mouth! They became insiders because of the 17th Amendment. Just take drinking age as one example. All over the country, it was 18, but the elites in control of Congress thought it should be 21, when the people didn't, which is why the states didn't do it. Congress doesn't have the authority to set a drinking age, so what did they do? They threatened the states. If you don't raise the drinking age to 21, then say goodbye to your highway funds. Now, do you honestly think that would have gotten past the Senate if they'd been picked by the state legislatures? The whole point of it was to stop exactly that from happening. And look at how much power and influence senators today have, especially the majorly elite ones like Chuck Schumer.
The U.S. House of Representatives will have 930 members.
Just wow. And he even admits...
And of course would also make it so that there would be 1,033 electoral votes, assuming the Electoral College still existed.
To throw things even further towards his beloved elites.
How would more electoral votes, including in rural conservative areas, lead to more power being thrown to big cities?
Geez, were you not following what he was saying? He was talking about increasing the members of the House of Representatives, which are apportioned by population. The fact that each state gets 2 senators is the balancing factor. But he would way dilute that. The only way to maintain the balance would be to increase the number of senators by proportion. You can do basic math, right?
So, wait a minute, did he pull the number out of thin air, or was it specifically designed to give more power to Democrats?
Geez, can you not follow a simple mathematical progression here? Go ask your 3rd grade teacher.
Oh, also, are you going to, actually explain how Wilson's model would give more power to Democrats? Of course you're not, we're just skipping over that part.
I did not, liar! The Electoral College has a balance between population and region. Increase the influence of the population factor, and the region factor suffers. This is basic math. It's a proportion. The Electoral College has 538 members, based on 435 House members, plus 3 for the District of Columbia, and 100 senators. Put 438 in the numerator and 100 in the denominator, and you'll see that the college is weighted to the population over the states by a factor of 4.38. Now, he wants to increase that number to 930 and still have 100 senators. So that weighting towards the population increases to 9.33 because that's 933 over 100. Are you really not getting that? Maybe you should go back to your 3rd grade math teacher and apologize for sleeping through her class. Effie's just playing dumb here. He knows what he's doing. But he has to pretend that I'm the one being inconsistent because he can't refute it. How pathetic can you get? So thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, leave a comment, and go to donate.bogosity.tv to keep me doing what I do. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.